Okay, let's call the meeting to order.
Keith.
Keith, go ahead.
Brian Gallitz.
Everybody in? Supervisor Schleif is excused. Supervisor McCune is running a little late. We'll be here. Let's begin with a moment of silent prayer.
Of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
The affidavit of posting. This is a meeting of the Washington County Board of Supervisors. Prior to this meeting, public notice was given by posting a copy of the agenda in the office of the county clerk and emailing the agenda to the West Bend Daily News, which is the official newspaper. In addition, the agenda was emailed to CNI Newspaper, Express News, the Kewaskum Statesman, Milwaukee Journal Sentinel, WIBD, WMBZ Radio, and WTKM Radio. The above action is in conformity with the state of Wisconsin's open meeting law. We'll begin with the consent agenda. As Resolution 28, commendation of Mary Becker. She is not here, correct? If there's no opposition, we can move that to the consent agenda. Supervisor Mahalik, move it.
To move that with the addition of item 1.
Okay. Okay, do we hear a second? Supervisor Brandt? All in favor, signify by saying aye. 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 Okay. We'll begin with personal appearances, letters, and other communications, the Washington County Library's update.
Good evening. I'm Jennifer Einwalter. I'm the director of the Jack Russell Memorial Library in Hartford. Hi, Tim. I'm speaking tonight on behalf of the 5 municipal public libraries in the county: Germantown, Hartford, Kewaskum, Slinger, and West Bend. Our goal tonight is just to provide you with an update of what we've been doing, where we're going, and give you kind of an overview of what we've been doing and our plans for next year. This year, for the first time in 20 years, the libraries were at the Washington County Fair. We had a blast. We spoke to over 2,000 people. It was great. We had kids' activities. Our booth was really fun. We also staffed it with members of our staff, so somebody was there from the time that the booth opened in the pavilion to the time that we closed. We do plan on going back next year and continuing to spread our efforts about the 5 libraries and what we do. Just so you're aware that countywide library usage for the first 6 months of this year is up 2%. We're all seeing an increase in library usage, which is fantastic. And that's only physical materials. That does not include downloads or streaming of content that we have available as well. I want to introduce you to the librarians. So Tricia Smith is from Germantown, if you want to stand. And I'll read her report. She's been the director there for just 3 years? Yeah. They have continued to see increases in circulation, programming, and service. They finished a restructuring project of their staff this year, and they've had the opportunity to purchase new furniture and complete a 2-year painting project inside. They're finishing up their summer reading program, and they had over 1,700 kids, teens, and adults participate. They offered over 16 programs during the summer, and they also welcomed youth performers on their Thursday programs. Their youth and adult services team has been working to expand programming and outreach for all ages. They're always on the road. They're going to every fair, everything you can think of in this county. The Germantown Library is there. They're also looking to start a teen advisory group. And this fall, they will be doing a series of German and Germantown history programs to launch their new German picture book collection. They're going to have their 3rd annual literacy program party in September. It's the completion of a 2-year project with their local Moms Club. The local Moms Club has been very supportive of Germantown and helping them to create some early literacy play spaces. They've put in a really cool kitchen area for the kids to play. They've done some STEAM kits, some STEM learning. They've also updated their story time room. For the fall, Tricia is planning to launch some new online services for the public, including being able to reserve community rooms, register for programs online, and they want to add some self-checkout options at their circulation desk. So she's been doing a really tremendous job. So in Hartford, we've had quite a year. We had a employee of 42 years retire, and we did not refill that full-time position. Instead, we flipped it and we created some part-time positions. We were able to expand library hours this year as well with the support of our Common Council. Couldn't have done it without their positive encouragement of opening the library 5 more hours a week. So we open every day at 9 o'clock now, Monday through Saturday. It's been wildly popular by our public, and we're just really excited about it. We had a fantastic summer in Hartford. We changed our name of our summer reading program. It is now the Summer Learning Challenge. We focus on reading, discovering, and creating. So we want children and parents to get out in the community and to do things, so including things like going to the zoo, making pictures, playing with their friends. That all counted as part of the summer reading program. We read over 550,000 minutes, and we spent 10,000 days discovering new things and close to 9,800 days creating. Just in time for Labor Day, we're going to be launching a new streaming service in Hartford through a company called RB Digital. You'll be able to check out an entertainment pass for 7 days, and you'll have access on your phone, your tablet, or your computer. You'll have access to British television, the great courses, concerts, indie flicks, and many more things. Next year, our big push is going to be to get some additional streaming services. We're going to be getting Freegal, which is a music streaming service. You'll be able to download 3 download songs a week. You'll get to keep that in your music library if that's what you want, where you want to keep it. And it's all ad-free, and it's all just with your Jack Russell card. We're also going to give patrons access to Hoopla. It's a digital media service, so people can go anywhere, anytime, 3 o'clock in the morning when you're in your pajamas, and you can download a movie or a television show. Lori Crease is from the Kewaskum Library. She wants to let you know that they're wrapping up a great summer of reading. Preliminary numbers show they had 180 children and 31 young adults sign up. They had a lot of great summer programs. Their most favorite program this summer was from the Who's Woods Raptor Center. Diane, a woman named Diane owns that. She came to Hartford as well. They actually brought a bald eagle and shared with the public. So between Kewaskum having 100 people and we had about 200 people, there were quite a few people that got access to it. They've got lots of exciting events in Kewaskum. They're going to be renovating their municipal building, which includes the village offices, their police department, their council chamber, their community room, and the library. They're very excited because Kewaskum's been waiting for a long time to expand their library. So they did make the decision to keep everything in one centralized location, so the library and all those services will remain where it's located right now in Kewaskum. As for the library's expansion, Lori's goal is to increase square footage to keep up with the needs of the public. They want to add a well-equipped community room, provide quality programming, space for kids, teens, and families, and comfortable seating for people to come in and read and relax. Slinger, Leslie Schultz, she's their new director. She's been on the job for about 6 months. She's had quite a 6 months at a really cool, fun library. They have, since she started in March, the library has expanded their hours. They are now open all year round on Saturdays from 9 until noon. They've launched a new website. They've made changes to the inside of the library with furnishings, and they are in the process of getting some signage to display the collections to help people find things. From the 19th of this month through September 20th, the library will be under construction to update plumbing, remodel bathrooms, and add more programming space. For the first 2 weeks of construction, a satellite library will be offered in the Slinger Village Hall. They, again, like the rest of the libraries, had a really great summer reading program. They had over 531 readers read a quarter of a million minutes. Their adult program is still going, And they're looking forward to this fall of increasing their programming. Some of the things they're offering are a Pete the Cat Day, a 100th season of the Green Bay Packers, the ABCs of CBD oil, and many more programs. Next year, they're going to add some programming for babies and infants. So if you have grandchildren or children, you're going to want to check out the Slinger Library. And our last library is West Bend. Amy Salomon is the director there. She is also the director of the County Resource Library, which through our county contract with the municipal libraries, they provide each library with services. As a collective group, we've agreed that the services that we each get through that contract are access to databases. So the 3 databases we have are, we have A to Z. It's a business database. You can write a resume. You can look for all, you want to write a business plan, it'll show you how to do it. You can do some background check in there. Ancestry, which is our fan favorite, gets the most use out of the entire county. Millions and millions of records are available. One of my favorites is Pronunciator. It's a language database. You can learn how to speak 50 languages in 75 languages. And there's also a U.S. citizenship component to that. They've all had great responses. This is in addition to the Gale courses that are available, which is free online classes. So if you're thinking about taking a class or you need continuing education credits for where you work, you can do that through the library with the Gale courses. So as far as Amy's update is, during the first half of this year, they went through a strategic planning process. The board, their board adopted their plan in July, and it includes an emphasis on marketing library services to all residents that are served by their library. And they're looking to strengthening partnerships within their community. Their staff recently started a new marketing podcast called Pager. It's to promote reading and services offered by the library. Like Kewaskum, and Slinger, they are also doing some renovating of their building. They're going to be renovating their basement. They're doing this by partnering with their West Bend Parks and Recreation and Forestry Department. They want to create a new usable space in their basement for use by both departments. Cleanup of the basement is happening now, as well as design work. I have one last thing I want to mention. Next year, one of the things that the libraries have been doing for the last couple of years, we've been doing some programming together. So this year we went to the fair, we did a big Libraries Transform in the spring. For 2020, we're challenging the Washington County residents, the 135,000 people that call this great place home, to check out 2 million items, 2 million in 2020. That's either physical checkouts or digital downloads. We're gonna combine everything together. As a county, we circulate about 1.2 million to 1.5 million items a year. We'd like to challenge everybody to get to 2 million. The libraries have a lot to offer, and we really appreciate your support. Thanks.
Thank you. Any questions? All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
We'll move on to consideration upon request reading of resolutions and ordinances. 2019 Resolution 16, resolution changing Washington County's form of government to create the Office of County Executive, Washington County, reconsideration. I'll entertain a motion to postpone this resolution to the regular September County Board meeting in order that all supervisors have the time and opportunity to review all pertinent information that has been presented to the ad hoc committee. The committee voted on August 12th to recommend to the board to change our form of government to the county executive model. The final meeting for the ad hoc committee meeting will be on August 26th at 5 p.m. The ad hoc committee will recommend amendments to the resolution for the full county board to consider at the regular county board meeting in September. Motion by Supervisor Bossert, second by Supervisor Mary. Before debate, Administrator Shulman's going to be presenting to the entire board a PowerPoint presentation provided to the ad hoc committee at their meeting on August 12th.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As the chairman indicated, this presentation was given on Monday night to the ad hoc committee. I know a number of you were here, but this was a request of the committee that this presentation be given here as well. Some of you may have had the opportunity to read an article in the Daily News this morning that attempted to reflect what happened at that meeting. I would say to you that they got part of it right. I hope you hear from this presentation that you get the entirety of the presentation. As you all know, this discussion is a very important discussion for Washington County, monumental in many ways. no matter what you decide, one way or the other, it's going to have a long-lasting effect on the county. And so I hope that you're deliberating it carefully and thoroughly thinking it through. As part of that silence, for the most part, from me, I have received direction from the Ethics Committee that it's my job to counsel you. And so along with the state of a county where I tried to give a thorough explanation of what I thought was coming in the next several years, I wanted to do the same thing in a little bit more detail here and in front of the ad hoc committee specifically, again, who asked me to give this presentation to you tonight. So what I'm going to talk about, I've actually talked to some of you about in the past. When I first started as county administrator, I gave a presentation that talked about, actually I guess it was county manager at that time, talked about what the role of the county manager was relative to what you've been used to in the past. Prior to that, there was an administrative coordinator position. For those of you who weren't here, essentially that was a position with all of the responsibility but none of the authority that the county administrator has. In this case, that changed, and so I gave this presentation to department heads as well as to the county board as a whole. And this is a piece of that in light of today's discussion on the decision that ultimately you'll be asked to make again in the month of September. Basically, what this is an academic discussion. You can see on the bottom of this slide that this isn't my idea. The credit goes to Professor John Nalbandian, who is a professor from Kansas University, Master of Public Administration program. Kansas is one of the highest regarded programs in the country for public administration. And Professor Nalbandian, now Professor Emeritus, is one of the highest regarded professors in the country. Basically, his argument is that politics and administration is a dichotomy. They meet together, oftentimes crossing paths with one another, but they rely heavily on one another and are distinct from each other. And they speak two totally different languages. What you see in this slide here is trying to articulate the differences between the two. Ostensibly in the county as of today, the difference is the folks who sit on this side of the dais and the folks who, in my case, sit in this seat specifically. Politics is a necessary evil. You like it or dislike it, I've heard many four-letter words used describing it, but at the end of the day, our system is built on it. The entire system of American democracy or democratic republic, however you choose to define it, is predicated on politics. And all politics really is the battle of ideas. And that is something that I'm going to argue for the rest of this presentation that is missing in Washington County. That battle of ideas doesn't happen as much as it often should, and I think it's led to some of the discussions or stalemates that we've seen in the last 15 months. If you look at the slide, what you see on the right-hand side is a description of the different characteristics of how administration functions. And this doesn't mean specifically administration as in the administration department, but departments generally speaking. Department heads are in problem-solving mode. They're thinking in terms of data and plans and goals and reports. As a matter of fact, their job specifically is to do a lot of those things and present a lot of those types of things for you. They're thinking, their currency is knowledge, knowing history of issues, the learning on a constant basis. And the longer time has gone on, the more specialized different positions have gotten in administration. Predominantly, the positions are predicated on being cooperative, having continuity, being here over a long course of time, and being predictable. In administration, generally speaking, we're not interested in seeing those things that the type of conflict, as you can see, that politics sometimes results in. Politics, on the other hand, is where ideas happen and where ideas clash. Passion and dreams. Think for a moment about presidential campaigns. They're running on campaigns such as Make America Great Again or Hope and Change. These are big, overarching concepts that carry the day in political campaigns, trying to set a new vision, a new course. Oftentimes, that turns into power struggles. In your case, those power struggles have normally found themselves on the floor of the board in the reorganizational meeting. Rarely have we seen power struggles in the form of political debates and political candidacies. at least in form of the county board. On occasion, we've seen them in the form of the sheriff's race, as an example. But typically, with the 26 seats that we have here, we don't see that. So for those of you who are visual thinkers, look at it this way. On the bottom, you're going to see time. On the left side, you're going to see learning. Over time, we all, at some point in time, had a civics course. Now they're mandated in the state of Wisconsin, right around, I think, 5th grade. But before that, usually we had a civics course, and we get a general education in how government is supposed to work, at least theoretically how it is supposed to work. And we have some concept of how government is. Unless you're a political junkie, and a lot of people aren't, there isn't a great deal of learning that happens after that. Maybe you graduate high school, you had a class in high school or potentially in college, but after that, unless you're really interested in it, there may not be a great deal of learning. For you, as county board supervisors, maybe you're on a town board, maybe you're on a village board or a city council, or you've been appointed to some plan commission or something in the past, there's a little bit higher degree of learning. You're into a position where you're figuring out how budgets work. I'm talking to you about minding the gap or the structural budget deficit all the time. You're starting to get a handle on how government functions. That's a different level of learning. And you can see over time now, there is some learning, and it's ongoing. Staff, on the other hand, full-time administration per se, is in the business of day-to-day dealing with different things. And department by department, we're also getting continuing education credits on a continual basis. I just went out east doing my own type of continuing education. It's part of what brought me back and had that light bulb moment while I'm out there that we haven't had this discussion in a long time. There's a continual learning process that's happening with staff, not only on the continuing education side, but also on the day-to-day side. We're seeing firsthand in real time problems on the ground and are proposing solutions that are coming to you. And we're constantly making recommendations for improvements and changes. As that's happening, it's my job as county administrator to manage the gap, manage this public policy gap. What is that exactly? Well, as I described, staff is constantly learning both in real time and in continuing education, and those ideas have to be translated. You're part-time supervisors. There's not an expectation that you're an expert in everything. And so there's a learning curve in between, we're calling it a gap in this case, of how we translate what's happening out in the field, boots on the ground day to day, to what public policy changes need to be made. That's the job of a county administrator. The job of an elected official is what I'd call politics. You could call it a public policy gap of its own, but it's your job as elected 26 supervisors to manage the gap between yourself and your electorate. And what I will argue in this discussion is that that isn't happening as effectively as it could be. One of the things that came up at the ad hoc committee on Monday was a handout that was provided that showed all of the races, 52 races for county board supervisors over the last 2 election cycles. And out of those 52 races, there's an asterisk, and you can go online and look at it. I believe they're in front of you tonight as well, if I'm not mistaken. There's an asterisk next to all the races that were competitive races, or at least quote-unquote competitive races. What I would argue to you is that out of all of those competitive races, I can likely count on one hand the number that actually resulted in a true public policy debate about any issue, any specific issue. How many times did you see maybe you're the one handing out materials saying, I'm a conservative, this is my family, I was born and raised in Washington County, but not boiling down to what is it that you want to do for Washington County and comparing and contrasting that to what the other candidate wants to do. More often than not, there's not even another candidate to look at. I'm talking about the type of the debate that we saw in the sheriff's race as an example last year. There was a true public policy discussion about what the sheriff's department should look like for the next several years. That, on rare occasion, has happened in Washington County in the last 2 election cycles. Basically, what is happening is staff is bringing to you recommendations that are the administratively feasible. We're trying to help explain to you what can actually be accomplished with the dollars that you're providing, with the resources, human resources, dollars and cents resources, et cetera, that we have been given in order to accomplish things. Your job is to tell us what's politically acceptable. Over the last 15 months, there's been a significant breakdown in this process. That gap management of politics is being stressed and has been stressed for some time. And I'm going to argue to you that something's got to change to make that happen. You may not like politics. It may be not something that you love to partake in. I'm sorry, it's how ideas are battled. And when we don't have that battle happening in the middle of election seasons when it's supposed to happen, it comes to our front door in situations like we had at a public hearing just a couple weeks ago. Okay? We had a vote of this county board of 20-6 to approve a fee, and now we're in a process where we know about half the board is not interested anymore after that public hearing. That debate should be happening in election processes, not in the middle of a year while we're trying to plan a budget. That creates unnecessary politics. If that gap isn't managed, just like if the gap between administration and yourselves isn't managed, unnecessary politics work their way in. And we find ourselves with one vote margins or tied votes, God forbid, or reversing votes that we just made a month or so before. The time has come, as I said during my State of the County address, the time has come to focus on people. And we've somehow lost focus on people. You have to know, we rely on you as staff, we rely on you as elected officials to keep the pulse on the community on what their expectations are and what they want. When you don't do that, we are going to have problems in our organization managing, particularly when the state's pushing on us structural budget deficits because of tax levy freezes and inadequate funding. When we get unfunded mandates and then there's an option to fund them, and you choose not to, it creates problems that forces us to have budget workshops after county board meetings. I'm asking you to think long and hard about how you want to have politics play out in Washington County. You can do it by virtue of elected county board elections. I would argue too, if you have no interest in doing county executive, and I'm not here advocating that you should do county executive, let me be clear. But what I am arguing is politics is necessary. And right now, 26 supervisor seats isn't cutting it. So I would advocate either you reduce the size of the board to make sure that that political debate is happening, or you contemplate going to a county executive. One or the other is needed in order to have good, constructive debate on a political platform which happens out in the month of April and the month of February. So with that, just a few things that I want you to think about because I don't want you to feel like somehow there's something you've done necessarily that's created this gap. That's just not the case. These gaps are widening. Part of it is staff is getting more and more proficient over time. We're asking county employees, just like every other sector, to become better experts at what they're doing. And they're responding to that. They're becoming better experts, which makes that gap go up even faster and farther. But what's happening on the political front is different. The population in Washington County is growing faster than most counties in Wisconsin. In fact, we're growing and many other counties are quite literally dying. The other thing that's happening is really a dang shame. A couple of months ago, I guess it's a few months ago already, I was at an event shortly after the last editor of the West Bend Daily News was let go. And there was an announcement that had happened, and the room broke out in applause. I think that's a crying shame. When you lose a local news source, the quality goes down, and constituents don't know what's going on. And you end up with articles like you had this morning. That's a real problem for Washington County. And I know it was a discussion at the ad hoc committee. It's hard to get information out if you're a candidate, if you're the county at large, no matter who you are. It's a real problem. And that is nobody's fault, but it's a reality. Social media isn't making things any better. Washington County is doing 1,000 times more than we were 5.5 years ago when I got here. And I can tell you, and I'm sure Ethan and Jamie and Ashley who are busting their butts trying to keep information out there and build our followers and things like that will tell you, it's never enough. And the information that gets out and the responses that are had aren't overly effective. But it is something, especially when we have such a lack of local news media. And finally, as I said before, few contested races are problematic. You have to have these debates at the local level. I think it was Supervisor Brandt that said all politics is local. That is where it happens. So where are the messages going to get out? The 26 of you is where messages get out. And it's more than when elections happen in February and April. I know there are some of you who do it. For example, I know Supervisor Jenkins sends out a quarterly newsletter. He talked about it at ad hoc committee meeting the other day. That's one effective way of doing it. But if all 26 of you aren't doing it, there's pockets of constituents that are getting information, there's pockets of constituents that aren't. I know other supervisors, for example, Supervisor Krebs goes to town meetings every month. That if those things aren't happening on a consistent basis and debates aren't happening there, they're going to happen like they happened a couple of weeks ago. And that's problematic for Washington County. At the end, the county executive is one concept. Again, I'm not advocating for you to go to county executive, but I am advocating for political change in Washington County. The way that a county executive will work is not all that different from how an administrator works. But what it will do, essentially, is have one person that's going to be full-time job of trying to keep a pulse on folks in the community. That's one methodology of doing it. The other methodology is you all are doing it. And right now, I know that that doesn't happen as effectively as it could. Take a look at our organizational chart. Here's another way of looking at it. If you look at the citizens of Washington County and the county board, you're the first stop. You're the folks that are held accountable. Do you remember when I gave my State of the County address and I said, county administrators certainly can fill this gap, but it feels contrived. When county administrators and staff are the ones standing at public informations, giving information, I'll use the example of the County Highway W extension, or better yet, the reliever route. When Scott Schmidt and I are standing at those meetings, you know who they're calling on us to see? You. They don't want to see a couple bureaucrats standing in front of them and explaining this stuff. They want their elected official. And if you don't believe me, ask Supervisor Krebs. He was standing in the back. That's what they expect. Right now, you've got a situation where staff's the one who's got to have those conversations, where we're having public information meetings for highway issues, and it's staff standing there. Politics is necessary, and this is where it happens. All politics is local. The operational gap you leave to staff, whether it's an elected county executive or a county administrator. We have multiple department heads, many of whom are here tonight, who have master's degrees in their specific area. They know how to manage operational gaps. They communicate to you, the committee, to you as an individual supervisor on what's happening day to day. We're capable of doing that. A county administrator is capable of doing that. What we're not capable of doing is managing those politics. That's your job. If you decide on it, that's the job of an elected county executive. So, with that, I'm happy to answer any questions. I know there were plenty of them at ad hoc committee meeting. Mr. Chairman?
Supervisor Dice?
I don't have a question, but Ashley, is there an extra agenda? Because there was none at my place when that was why I called in. Thank you.
Supervisor Carr?
Yeah, I understand what has just been discussed, of course, as we all do, but it has to be recognized that one of the main reasons, in my opinion, that there has not been more of a debate is that there are so few individuals in this county and in others as well, I'm not blaming Washington County, who want to stand up and serve. And if you don't have people who want to stand up and serve, you don't get a debate. You only get one person who's willing to stand up and say, I'll do the job of coming to these meetings, reading all the information, trying to get the pulse of the electorate in our area. And so you can't have a debate if there's only one side. You know, you can't have a person debating with themselves, correct? So as a result, I think that that's a real problem. And I don't think having fewer areas and fewer supervisors is going to make any difference in that respect. As a matter of fact, I would suspect that it would be more likely that a person would stand up and offer to be a participant in this process if there's fewer people to deal with in a smaller area like what we have here, 26. Now, I'm just guessing that. I don't know if that's the case. But, you know, I think that's a real problem, and a lot of what you've said, Josh, really doesn't address that problem. And so it's just an observation that I have. Thanks.
Supervisor Basil.
Well presented. I really like that a lot. I agree, the board needs to be downsized. The public safety, we haven't met since May. There's 5 supervisors that get wiped out right there. You could take that, public safety, and you could put that to executive. You could get that. I think you'd have more debate then. To me, this challenge between the townships and the cities, municipalities, I think that's just hogwash. If you represent your constituents, you don't care where they live. You represent the constituents. We do need to have more debate. My focus changed in the last 3 years. I don't think about myself anymore. I'm on the downstroke. I'm thinking about the generation, Josh, your generation, Ash's generation, all the younger generations. What are they going to want in this county? What I want now is irrelevant as far as I'm concerned. We need to start looking at what's best for the county in 2030, 2040, 2050. And right now, we're just hashing out stuff that's in the present. It's just gonna roll right past us. Thank you.
Supervisor Kelly.
Mr. Carr made some great points there as far as voter apathy. To a point, I'll concede that is true. But one thing that a county executive brings is a county-wide race where there's a lot more money brought into it, a lot more prestige, a lot more media coverage. All of us here probably spend, what, $300, $500, maybe $800 on a campaign? I mean, for the most part, a lot of us aren't even spending that because we're unopposed. You know, maybe we'll buy some yard signs or something like that. But we spend almost nothing, so we're not actually getting any message out there. That's Josh's kind of his point, is that we're not driving that political conversation at all. And that's one thing where a county executive does do that, or at least having that race. And also possibly shrinking the size of the board maybe makes it a little bit more desirable. So I guess that's all I wanted to comment on, was just that something to think about. If we need to drive politics a little bit more in this county, I agree with that. And that's it. Thank you.
Supervisor Bossert.
Okay, the first thing is I want to thank Josh for a great presentation. Now, Josh is advocating either for a smaller board or a county executive. My first question is, why not both? And I think that's something for us to consider long-term. I like the idea of a county-wide discussion. You know, this last round, we had 9 contested elections, 17 uncontested elections. That means in at least 17 of our districts, there was no discussion at all about what the future of our county is going to look like. So I like the idea of having a county-wide discussion that way that a county executive would bring. Regarding the number of seats and how that impacts participation, you know, we had in 2018, we had 9 contested races. In 2016, we had 7, and we had 1 write-in race where 2 different candidates took out the paperwork needed to run as official write-in candidates. So we had 8 there. So between those 2, that's an average of 8.5 out of 26, or about a third of the districts were contested. If we go back to 2014, we only had 5 out of 30. At that time, we had 30 districts. Only 5 of them were contested. So that's about, doing some quick math, that's about 17%. So simply by reducing 4 board supervisors, we doubled the number of contested races. We doubled the number of discussions that are happening in districts about the future of our county. So I would say that that would suggest if we continue to reduce the size of the board, we're going to have more contested races, we're going to have more discussions that we need to have. And of course, having a county executive would trigger a county-wide discussion. So those are 2 big reasons why I think it's the right move to look at both of these options. All right, thank you, Mr. Chair.
One of the things that came up at the ad hoc committee that I think is fair to share here as well is that the system is a bit unfair, tipped away from your advantage in that we have more government than you can shake a stick at in Wisconsin. There are 21 different governmental units, not including the county, an additional 6 school districts, all having elected boards. Many of you are on some of those other boards. And so it is extraordinarily oversaturated. This is one of the things that I learned while I was out east, talking to other folks. One example that I brought up yesterday was the state of Virginia, a city, an independent city, which provides a county function. So not too different in terms of size of us, in terms of population, and in terms of square miles. They have 1 governmental unit, not 22, 1. They have 1 school board, not 6, 1. 9 people on the city council, 5 people on the school board. There's plenty of politics that happen in that particular place. And there's plenty of public policy discussions that are happening in real time and at political time and at election time. The system isn't built in your favor. There's no doubt about it. But to address Supervisor Carr's point, if you know you have that problem, you don't keep a large board. I would think you would want to have as few as is reasonable. And I understand there's a debate to be had over how much representation do we want to make sure is balanced between towns, cities, and villages. That's a real issue that's got to be talked about. But you already know you've got a problem with people not being interested in running. Why would we keep the number high? It doesn't make sense. And to that end, I would imagine most counties over the last several decades that have gone to county executive probably ran into the same issue and got nervous cutting the number of county board supervisors. And as a result, probably went to county executive because it's easier to do that. Again, I'm not advocating for a one or another. What I am advocating, and if you do neither, it's not as if Washington County is going to fail. We've been here for over 150 years. We'll continue to do very well, I'm sure. I would argue, and I think there's others of you in this room who would argue, we're the best run county in the state of Wisconsin, at least on a financial basis we are. But that doesn't mean there's not room for improvement. And when you compare us to the other 71 counties, the bar is pretty darn low. So I wouldn't go out of your way breaking your arms, smacking your own backs. I'm encouraging you, as you go through this discussion of county executives, think through this. Don't shortcut it. And I know that it was a 13-13 tie because people felt it was rushed. I think this is some of the stuff that you should have been thinking and talking about throughout this process. Again, I've tried to keep myself out of it. I'm trying to do my best to follow the advice of the ethics committee that the county attorney had worked with me to get their opinion on. But I think this is the stuff you really need to think about. Whether it's the size of the county board or whether it's the county executive, something's got to change in terms of politics. I'm sure it's very nice to not have to run a competitive race every 2 years. I'm quite confident of that. And I respect the fact that I'm standing up here lecturing my 26 bosses. On the other hand, what's good government? That's the question you got to answer for yourself. What's the best government that you can leave for generations to come in Washington County? Because the truth of the matter is, in 4 years, if there's more than 5 of you left here, it's going to be a lot. If you look around, I said this to you during your discussion with Dr. Schrader. When you look around the room and you think about past 2022, so 2024 election, how many of you will be sitting in these seats? The answer is not many. And that's from discussions with you. So think about what it's going to be like when you're gone. I think that's what resulted in this conversation to begin with. I think that's where the discussion should sit for the next several weeks as you're determining what your decision is in September. And regardless of what that decision is, it's what you should be thinking about moving forward when the size of the county board comes up. So thank you.
Okay, thanks. Thanks, Josh. We have a motion on the floor to postpone the resolution till the regular September county board meeting in a second. We'll vote on this electronically. Roger? Motion passes 23-2 to go to September. 2019 Resolution 29, relocation order, County Trunk Highway W, State Highway 33 to Highway 175. Motion by Supervisor Krebs, second by Supervisor Bullock. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, we'll vote on this electronically. Are we ready? Sorry, wait, we have one. Supervisor Merton?
Kind of rushed. Is there a map or anything what we're talking about Highway W?
It's in your
I mean-
packet.
I don't want to just vote on something blind.
It's,
I don't have one to, sorry. I don't have one to project, but it is in your
I didn't
packet.
see a map.
Does somebody have a page of what?
It's in the packet. I must have missed it. I looked at,
it's in there.
I know, I looked for it.
Under
That's the
resolution,
resolution. The resolution. What?
40 pages.
Well, no wonder I didn't get to it.
I don't know what particular page it is, but
Yeah, I know.
do you have any questions about it, Supervisor Martin? Okay. Okay, seeing no further questions, we'll vote on this electronically. Supervisor Mahalik? Supervisor Gonring? There you go. Supervisor Merton, Supervisor Kist?
I'd like my question answered before I'm going to vote. I'm looking at these maps, okay? Can someone just say that it's from here to here? Is it a repair of W?
It's a reconstruction of W. It's County Highway 33, State Highway 33 to State Highway 175.
Okay, it's not an extension beyond.
Correct.
No.
Thank you.
Yes.
Motion passes unanimously. 2019 Resolution 30, County Aided Culvert Replacement, Town of Trenton. Supervisor McEwen, Supervisor Sorcy. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor will vote electronically. Sorry. Almost. Supervisor Mary? Motion passes unanimously. Resolution 31, 2019, General Fund Transfer, Human Services Department, Electronic Health Record System. Supervisor Mahalik, Supervisor Bossert. Any discussion? Supervisor Krebs?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Was any of this in a long-range plan?
What do you mean by long-range plan?
For
Capital
budget-
improvement plan?
Yeah,
No, it was not. It has been a problem since I've been here. It's been a problem probably for 7 or 8. I was trying to be a little generous. So we have been working on it for all of that time, and in the last 9 months, this has become the solution. You may remember, some of you who were here when I began 5.5 years ago might remember, shortly before I came, there was a purchase of a different software called Litech. You recall that name? There's heads nodding. That software was a one of a kind. There isn't another county that runs that software. It was very cheap, especially relative to what you see in front of you. And we spent the better part of 5 years trying to make it work. This product is owned by multiple counties. 26 other counties in Wisconsin. It is reliable. It comes down to a reimbursement issue for us, basically, a quality issue as well. But from the financial side, when you're spending $1 million, it comes down to a reimbursement issue. So it has been a work in progress. I would say the last 9 months have been planned toward this, and the general fund transfer is the most efficient way to do it.
What you alluded to reimbursement. What reimbursement are you talking about?
I'll let the director speak to that.
Good evening. Julie
Good
Driscoll
evening.
from the Human Services Department. So we utilize our electronic health record for multiple reasons. One of them is to maintain client health records, sort of the inputs and outputs of client service, but it's also our billing system. And our current system, while we are able to bill from it, what we're unable to ascertain is whether we're leaving money on the table or whether we're actually sending money out to our contracted providers more than they should. I'm 100% confident both of those things happen, that we are regularly leaving money on the table, meaning we're not getting the right reimbursement from Medicaid that we should, and that we're overpaying our providers in some instances. And so the current system that we have does not give us the data integrity that we need to assure that, whereas the new system will.
Okay. It says that the money's to be spent over a five-year period. Is that 5 years to implement the software, or is it a life expectancy of 5 years? What is that?
Yeah, so the first year is essentially to purchase the product, and then the 4 years, subsequent years, is to pay for the licensing and subscription. What we're asking is for the full amount of 5 years, so the bulk of purchasing the system, as well as 5 years of subscription and licensing, so that we can get the system implemented. It's still going to be a huge endeavor to implement a new system and to move our current system onto a new system. And then once we start realizing the revenue that we're assuming that we're going to realize, then after year 5, we will start budgeting regularly in the Human Services budget the yearly subscription and licensing fees.
Thank you.
Supervisor Gauss.
Thank you. So I understand the efficiency part of it. So presumably, we're going to collect more revenue, as you said, because of missed billings. We have belief that there's there. Have we done a small sampling to determine the likelihood of that 10 to 15% projected increase in revenue?
So there's a couple of different avenues of the revenue. I mean, we're spending multiple hours every day, every week, every month, tracking and retracking things outside of our system because the system doesn't track it for us. And so there are regular times when we're going through invoices and looking at data and going into the system and line by line, assuring that what is in the system is what we're billing, and we're still finding mistakes. And we sometimes can't determine why that mistake has occurred, despite staff going line by line. So what we know is that we'll also, not only will we see revenue recapture, but we'll also see some really significant staffing efficiencies. We spend multiple hours putting data in, and we can't get any data out. And so we have separate spreadsheets tracking things multiple times.
Yeah, that's the first thing I saw was efficiency. I guess the next question I have is regarding the particular software or system that we're purchasing. I didn't see anything about RFPs or that? How do we know it's going to serve our needs?
Sure. So there's currently 26 other counties that utilize this system, and there's a statewide user group. We have met with several counties, and we've been participating and listening into the user group. One of the key factors of a human services electronic health record is our ability to do state reporting. We're required to do state reporting, which is essentially pulling our data out of our system and sending it to the state system, and that is connected to the revenue that we receive from the state to provide the services. And right now, our IT department spends multiple hours trying to pull that data out and sending it up to the state. We believe that there's integrity issues with the data for that as well. What this system has done, or it has figured out with these 26 other counties, is a seamless reporting to the state for what they need. And so there's no other system that does this. We could certainly go with another electronic health record, but we'd be in the same boat that we are, asking them to try to figure out how to do state reporting for us.
Supervisor Mahalik.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just wanted to reference the fiscal effect. If you look at the numbers, generates revenue through billable insurance on average of $3.5 to $4 million per year. Estimated with an improved system, we can increase our billable revenue by 10 to 15%. So if you take the lower number of $3.5 million and you go 10%, this will pay for itself in less than 3 years. If you take the larger number, $4 million, and go to 15%, it would be a little over a year and a half. So we're looking at a return on investment from between just over a year and a half to 3 years, which in government terms is outlandishly great. So I would recommend voting for this.
Thank you. Supervisor Bosser.
I think one of the things we talked about at committee that hasn't been stated is the LIHTC system. Anytime the regulatory environment changed and we needed to change the system to reflect that, Washington County had to invest IT resources to make those changes. Am I mistaken at all in that?
That's correct. There's something in the healthcare system called ICD-10 codes. They used to be ICD-9 codes, and then when the state federal regulators decided to change it, then you have to update your system. And so we had to do a very manual process to update that. What this current software and this current company does is they're nationally connected, and so they're already abreast of what's happening at the federal level, and they're already developing the fixes, the upgrades, the technology to continue to move with the market. And we'll also have the 26 other counties as sort of a consortium of sorts to support those changes versus trying to figure it out here in Washington County on our own.
And then I think in addition, one of the things we talked about is we're finding the LIHTC system is really geared more towards small providers who have 1 or 2 or maybe 3 doctors. Mm-hmm. So, that's vastly underpowered for the operation we're running. Shortly after I was originally elected back in 2016, we transitioned from a 1980s payroll system. Am I misstating that at all, Todd? No, 1980s, so 30-year-old payroll system, still DOS-based. And we had to spend some money just like this system. But we're in the digital age. It's not just enough to stick a computer on a table and say, we have what we need. We have to have the right digital tools for the job. By all appearances, this is the right digital tool. Julie mentioned 26 counties use this. They did some reference checking. They made sure these counties were happy with this tool as well. And these counties are happy with this tool. It works. It does what they need it to. By all accounts, it should do what we need it to, and we're going to be better off by putting this in place.
Thank you. Supervisor Carr.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yeah, to build on what Supervisor Bossert started out saying and said very well, this organization that has developed and continues to change and improve this software is a national program, and we know one thing that's a given with healthcare on a national basis, and that is it's going to continually change. We don't know exactly how it's going to change. That's certainly a political question, but the fact is at some point it's going to continue to change and continue to change and continue to change. And This organization, because of its national activities and because of its intelligence by investigating what's going on in DC and at the state level, is the organization that's going to continue to change the software so that we are up to date continually. We've investigated that, and we've determined that that's the case. So I certainly would recommend that we go ahead and make this change and adopt this new program. Thank you.
Supervisor Krebs.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The fiscal note talks about the dollar amount for it, but how does that transfer from the general fund? What does that do to our general fund? Does that keep us in our target zone?
Yeah, I did note in the fiscal note that we would still be in compliance even after this transfer out.
Okay. Thank you.
Seeing no further discussion, vote on this electronically. This is a 2/3 vote. Roger. Try again.
You're right there. While the press is from, just, can I help you? Is that what you want?
Sure. Okay. Motion passes unanimously. 2019 Ordinance 10, Maintenance of New and Existing Private Sewage Systems. 2 changes, all private on-site wastewater treatment systems, POUTs, regardless of when they were installed, will be required to have maintenance completed by a properly licensed individual and a report filed with the department. And 2, the interval of maintenance will no longer require 2 years for a mound at grade or in-ground pressure systems. All POUTs will be required to have maintenance every 3 years. Entertain a motion. Supervisor Bassel, Supervisor Gallant, sorry. Supervisor Krebs.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. By expanding to pre-1979, how many more systems does that impact roughly?
Good evening. The answer to your question is we currently have about 13,000 systems on the maintenance program. With this change, it'll bring in approximately 7,000 to 8,000 more systems onto the program. So we're going from 13,000 to a little over 20,000 systems.
How will the people pre-1979 know that they'll now have to maintenance their systems? Will they receive the postcards?
Yes, they will all get postcards, just like the people are currently.
Okay, thank you.
Supervisor Martin.
Thank you. With all the discussion that's been going on about the POUT system, in order for the public to be totally aware of what we're doing here tonight, is really updating the section relative to the private on-site septic systems. It does not have anything to do with an additional fee on their tax bill. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Thank you.
Supervisor Hartwig.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I guess I have a question. I'd like to ask why. I know you have, when you have the tanks pumped, like the mount systems and stuff, and I see it's crossed out for 1979. Why did you change that? Now, the standard systems, how often do they get pumped? Every 2 or 3 years, or what happens with those?
The standard systems or conventionals are every 3 years currently. The mounds, at-grades, and in-ground pressures are currently every 2 years.
Okay, and
With this change, they'll all be 3 years.
so everything's going to be 3 years now?
Yes.
And the surcharge is no longer in effect? It's not happening?
We're not voting on it tonight.
That's not part of the
I didn't see it or anything. That's why I was wondering what happened.
It's next month.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Supervisor Mahalik.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just wanted to know, this is an extension of what the state is mandating us to do, correct?
That is correct.
And what we'll be, voting on in the future as far as funding, what we're doing is we're facing what is, for all intents and purposes, once we continue this, is an unfunded mandate from the state, correct?
You can call it that if you like.
Okay, so noted, thank you.
Supervisor Carr.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I was curious to read this requirement, this new resolution, and it says that the people who have the septic systems, the POUT systems, are required to keep a record of all of the activity that's occurred with their system. I'm kind of curious because, of course, what the recent proposal has been is to have, of course, the county have those people pay for exactly that same thing, keeping a record of all of the activity that's occurred with their system. Now, of course, this is a state requirement, so we can't change that. But it occurs to me that that there's a sort of a double counting going on here. The ordinance requires the individuals to keep track of this thing, but we're also, of course, doing it ourselves. As when I say ourselves, I mean the county. And so there's kind of a dichotomy here, it seems to me, in logic. You know, is everybody going to have to do this? And the county does it. The people who pump the septic tanks do it as well. How many different systems do we need to keep track of what's going on with these septic systems? It seems like we've got 3 different organizations that are keeping track of the same thing. And I understand that we don't have any choice, that it's a mandated activity on our part by the state. But it seems to me that it's somewhat illogical to require the homeowner to do the same thing that 2 other different organizations are doing. Thank you.
Supervisor Gunnery.
Yes, thank you. Well, all I have to say is it's about time that they are all on the same year cycle. Okay, that's the biggest questions we get. How come my neighbor doesn't have to have his pumped every 2 years? Or how come I have to do it every 2 years? Okay, I agree. I don't like that larger government, the state, is telling us that the counties have to keep track of it. Because yes, your pumpers are keeping track of it. They can tell you exactly when you had it done last, exactly what was wrong with it 25 years ago. Okay, if you're using the same pumper that whole time, they're gonna know. So, I mean, although I don't agree with the county being involved with keeping an extra tab on it, some people need it in that. So, but I'm glad to see that it is every 3 years now. Thank you.
Thank you. See no more discussion. We have a friendly amendment by County Attorney.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would ask if the board this evening would entertain a friendly amendment. If you look at line 26 of the proposed ordinance, it currently reads, "The property owner shall report to the department," and it goes on from there. In order to more closely mirror the administrative code for the state of Wisconsin, specifically I'm looking at SPS 383.55, what that particular code provision really says is the property owner or the owner's agent shall report to the department. And so to more closely mirror this particular ordinance to what state law requires, I would ask the board to consider making that friendly amendment. If there's an objection, of course, it would be debated and voted on, but it seems to make sense.
Doesn't have to be a motion for that.
Only if there was disagreement.
Only if there's disagreement. Is there any disagreement to that?
Clarification. Where it says department, do we have to say what department? Like the whole section really doesn't say what department you report to.
The statute or the administrative code provision talks to the governmental unit. So per our ordinance, in the bigger picture, the department refers to Planning and Parks Department.
Elsewhere in the code book,
Yep.
it would be directed there? Okay.
Okay. Okay, seeing no further discussion, we can vote on this electronically. Gotta give it a good push, Raj.
Really, really push it up. Oh, okay. With your permission.
Motion passes unanimously. A reminder, the Pouts informational meeting, for fiscal health, August 27th, 6 PM at Fair Park. It would be great, August 27th, 6 PM at Fair Park. It would be not expected, but would be very well appreciated, especially by your constituents. This is starting to get involved into politics a little bit better, so I would assume that all of you are going to appear. 6 PM. The Pouts informational meeting, with talking about fiscal health also, August 27th at 6 PM at Fair Park.
And what date?
What day is it? Tuesday.
So right on top of my city council meeting.
There you go. Okay, sorry about that. We did that on. Additionally, seated over here, Amy Resop, the state legislative liaison for Senator Ron Johnson. We're going to be, once we adjourn, we're going to be going into our budget roundtable, but there'll be a couple minutes. She is a conduit to Senator Johnson. If you have something that you need to speak with her about, it's going to go right to, it's going to be like speaking to Senator Johnson. So give her a tap, and if you have something to talk to her about, it'd be great.
That's in this room?
It's Amy. Could you stand up so everyone can see you? That's Amy. We're going to be meeting across the street, across the hallway. Sorry. Okay. Next meeting date for the county board, Wednesday, September 11th, 2019, 6 o'clock p.m. right here. We hereby adjourned.